Hey everyone, welcome to episode 384 of the All Dolphins podcast on this Friday, October 18th, 2024, 2 days before the Miami Dolphins return to action to face the Indianapolis Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium. It's a Friday, which means final injury report of the week day. And it's an interesting one for the Dolphins. And it kind of like took a downturn after what overall earlier in the week looked like a really promising injury report. So we're going to discuss that with Dave Hyde from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, award-winning columnist. Dave Hyde, how are you?
I'm doing well. Ready? Got an 8 o'clock flight to Indy, so I'm kind of curious about this game. Very interested.
Hopefully, we won't make you late for your flight. So we should dive right into it. We
Eight in
will
the
also.
morning. 8 in the morning. So if you make me
Oh,
late for the flight, then we got real issues.
okay, got it. Your direct flight, I hope.
No, we do
Oh,
not. I
I
do
hate
not have direct flight.
I hate those. I hate those.
I'll get a
Sorry.
I'll get a tour through Washington.
Okay.
Get a little view of the monument, and then we'll take off to Indianapolis. So
Okay. We'll also discuss comments made by head coach Mike McDaniel before practice on Friday regarding one Tua Tagovailoa. You may remember him as the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, who is eligible. If you follow this podcast, you probably know this by now. Eligible to come off injured reserve. Oh, was that a dog barking in the background, or
that was a dog making comment on Tua. I don't know.
okay? Wow, comments from the peanut gallery. Um, Eligible to come off injured reserve next week. And of course, the question was asked to Mike McDaniel. I understand you have a game 2 days from now, but you anticipate Tua returning to practice next week. And immediately, with all due respect, you gave him the out when you say, I understand you have a game 2 days from now. You immediately give him an out to say, I have a game 2 days from now, which is what he said, which goes along with his stance all along of not putting timelines. I mean, he kind of swayed from that when he said last week or Monday, I expect Tua to play at some point in 2024. And then he also followed up by saying the question was asked kind of in a roundabout sort of way, but the question was about whether he second guessed a decision to put Tua on IR, which forced him to miss 4 games, when based on all the outside signs from us non-medical people, he looked like maybe he could have been ready to play before that. And McDaniel's point was like, I don't have medical people ask me for advice on play. No, I don't ask medical people for advice on play calling. So I'm going to refer to them when it comes to decisions about Tua. What did you make of this whole
Well,
Tua?
let me first say this. I really don't like being put in this position where we're supposed
Oh,
to
I,
comment
I
on.
apologize. I apologize, Dave.
No. This is a not. This is a general theme that all of a sudden we're supposed to have opinions on concussions and neurological features. Are we supposed to know what's going on? I mean, just like McDaniel has to rely on the medical people to make the right, so do we, because we have absolutely no information or background or so anybody coming on saying Tua should retire, Tua shouldn't play, he should play, he should have played earlier. Nobody has any idea what they're talking about. And so, and I don't like being put in that position where we're supposed to have some educated or hot take or anything on concussions when we have absolutely no background, no information, and limited, access to, asking Mike McDaniel what the doctors are saying. So let me just say, whatever they decide, I assume is coming with the neurologist
Whoa, whoa.
neurologist. I'll get wow, that's a hard
Hey,
one to
take
say.
two.
I can't even say it. I can't even say it, much less dissect it. Probably if they gave me the information. So whatever they decide has to be with the best medical information in mind and to his health in mind, and then the Dolphins season in mind. So anybody coming with a hot take on, well, they shouldn't have put him on IR, really has no basis for the information. So that's my general take on all of this. Now, let me say this too, because I'm kind of confused this week. Monday, I was at the press conference, and the first 8 minutes of the press conference before a big game against Indianapolis was about players who won't even be there. Tua, Bradley Chubb, and I've never seen a coach answer these questions repeatedly and at length about, and I appreciate McDaniel doing. He's helping us ask that, but I'm used to coaches shutting down and saying, we'll talk about the players available to us. Get to next week, we'll talk about those who will be available for next week. Because I'm used to the NFL laser focus on the next game. And what was the number one topic around the Dolphins this week? Wasn't Indianapolis, wasn't how they attack do they go to a run strong offense against Indianapolis? It was Tua. When's he coming back? When is he going to be healthy? Oh, maybe he's not coming back the way Mike McDaniel answered it. I mean, it's very bizarre to me to have this be a topic of conversation going into, New England was a pivotal game. This is a pivotal game to get to Tua next week. And I think everybody would be shocked if Tua doesn't play next week. But I'm surprised it's become such a topic of conversation this week.
Really? Are you really surprised?
I'm surprised that,
or disappointed.
The Dolphins have Mike McDaniel has answered the questions and furthered the conversation rather than, again, I'm used to Sunday is the focus, and all of a sudden we're not looking at this Sunday, we're looking at the next Sunday, and everybody's talking about the next Sunday when Tua gets back and what it'll mean and will the season be alive and all that. And so I am surprised that he has let the conversation go around the team.
Yeah, I mean, because he would be well within his rights to say, listen, guys, I understand the interest in Tua in a situation, but I will be glad to discuss Tua when at the very least he's eligible to come off injured reserve. He wasn't even eligible to come off IR this week.
And so Mike could say that in a very creative and funny and inventive manner to his personality, but I think that would serve the team best right now. But I'm a little old school in that, I guess, because who's to say the team can't have two, balls in the air at the same, thinking about Tua coming back and trying to win this week. I'm not sure it takes away from their attention. I'm just surprised that, he sort of allowed it to become number one issue of the week.
Yeah, but I think that the Dolphins have made Tua front and center in everything that they do. And B, I think Mike McDaniel is smart enough to understand that for a vast majority of the fan base, Tua's return is more significant than the game against Indy, because if Tua doesn't return, doesn't matter what they do against Indy because they basically already given up on the season.
Really?
Right or wrong?
Really? I mean, there's a lot of season to play. If they gave up on the season, it's simply because they've completely mismanaged the whole quarterback situation. Okay, but they should be good enough to beat Indianapolis. Arizona is waiting. I mean, I think Arizona plays Monday night too, don't they?
They do.
And then they fly across the. I mean, there's a lot of built-in advantages in addition to playing a questionable Arizona team. So, these are games the Dolphins, if they're anything close to the team that we thought they were a couple months ago heading into the season, takes care of business no matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah, but Dave, I put out a tweet basically saying I really wish people would stop talking about this notion of a must-win game like this Indy game. Even if the Dolphins lose, they fall to 2-4. And I made the point.
Completely agree.
Green Bay made the playoffs last year. They started 1-4, and immediately the pushback is Dolphins are not Green Bay from last year. They suck. Even with Tua, what have they shown you that they could become even a playoff team? And it's like, that's what I'm saying, that a lot of fans, I mean, they've already they've checked out on this team, which is, to me, we're in mid-October, for Christ's sake. It's absurd.
I mean, go ahead.
No, I was gonna make a concussion point, which is different. So go ahead.
So, I agree with you completely. That look, there's a big difference between 2-4 and 3-3. 2-4,
one game
losing to Indianapolis, and 3-3, and having Tua coming back and all that stuff. But the larger point is that the schedule is opening up for them. You look at the teams that I thought everybody thought would be good at the start of the year, and Cleveland's given up on its season. The Raiders are sort of maybe going into what we thought they might be, and they are. Arizona is not good. Indianapolis had a chance to be good, and and you have to caution playing the schedule because the Dolphins not only have the easiest schedule right now by win percentage to the end of the season, they also have it to do the first 5 games where they played 3 1-win teams and they're 2-3. So it's hard to play the schedule. But my point being, I agree with you that they have ample opportunity, win or lose. There's enough runway left in the schedule and the season to come back if they become even from 2-4.
Yeah, and this is where I'm going to make the point again. Between 2001 and 2022, the Dolphins made the playoffs only twice, in 2008 and in 2016. Well, in 2008 they started 2-4, and in 2016 they started 1-4. So again, it's a long season. Just because the way the Dolphins are playing now is not necessarily the way they're going to be playing in January and December, folks. Hang with it. Okay, my point about concussion, and this is an offshoot of what I get on Twitter from feedback, with one gentleman kind of suggesting, of course, the NFL is going to clear Tua because they want him back on the field and all that. And my point is, do you honestly think, 2 points. Number one, do you honestly think that the NFL medical people would clear Tua knowing deep down that there's a greater risk, or they're putting him in jeopardy, and what kind of backlash would come and hell would come their way if he got reconcussed very quickly and very dramatically? That's number one. Number two, the other thing is, people need to understand, you're dealing with the brain. It's not an easily diagnosable injury like a torn ACL, where a torn ACL on player A is kind of the same as on player B. The spectrum of symptoms, long-term effects and all that, short-term effects on different players with concussions is so vast that there is no cookie cutter formula. Okay, for example, Devon Achane is going to be back Sunday. This will be part of the injury report, which we'll get to eventually, I promise. But okay, so he'll be back after 2 weeks. Teron Armstead and Kendall Fuller were back after 2 weeks, even though they had to miss a game. Achane didn't, because the Dolphins have a bye. That just so happened because those were mild concussions, and maybe they don't have the Tua history of concussion. But it's not the same for every single player, and folks have to wrap their heads around that.
Yeah, and look, Tua is the NFL's potentially worst nightmare. He's become the face of concussions. This is not only a liability issue, meaning concussions in general, but a PR issue for the league. And I'm sure they have gotten to his medical reports and shown them to their own doctors and got their own feedback on where they are. Not that they could block Tua or the Dolphins from playing him or anything, but I'm sure they just want to be informed on what's going on. Look, one of the doctors I talked to said concussions are like snowflakes. They're all different. And you cannot say this one happened to this guy, so this he had 2 weeks off, so this guy needs 2 weeks off. Now, I'm sure the NFL and the Dolphins want to take extra long with Tua on this one because of what's happened. And so now I wrote a column last weekend saying no matter what happens the rest of the season, there's two questions Steve Ross got to answer from the whole Tua experience right now. And that is, one, how to invest in another frontline quarterback, because someone's got to protect the organization. If Tua gets another concussion this year or next year, is it a month off? Is it 2 months? Is it the season? And so that's what they got to figure out, how to get a frontline quarterback, first round pick. However, and the other one is Chris Greer the guy to make that decision after you look at some of the roster foibles over the last 9 years. So, regardless of what happens the rest of the year, those are the two issues I think Steve Ross has got to ponder.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, are we so sure the Dolphins, because I have heard this, the Dolphins absolutely going to take a quarterback early in the 2025 draft because of what happened to Tua this year. Are we so sure that if Tua comes back this year, has no other concussion-related issues or no other significant injuries, are we so sure the Dolphins are going to go ahead and invest a first or second round pick on a quarterback next year? Because I am not. At the very least, I would hope they would go sign a veteran backup who would be a significant upgrade over what they did this offseason. But the notion that it's automatically now it's set in stone the Dolphins because of what happened to Tua, high pick will be spent on a quarterback. I'm not so sure. I think it's an automatic.
I agree with you. I don't know that it's automatic. And, where are they going to draft? Who's going to be available? What do they think of the guys available? There's too much unknown. That's what I'm saying. They got to decide. Steve Ross got to decide how do we invest and who's making that decision. But part of the reason the need to get to Tua so quickly in this season is their decisions on backup quarterbacks. And the gap between Tua and who they banked the season on was so vast that and you look at Indianapolis, they banked on Joe Flacco, who's available. He said Indianapolis was the only team that wanted him, which is just mind-boggling when you look at 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and stepping in for Anthony Richardson. And now the Dolphins are, I don't know if I think they're a little fortunate to get Richardson rather than Flacco, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that one. And in fact, I just did a mailbag on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. And by the way, Dave referenced his column. Check it out on sunsentinel.com. Because we encourage you guys to read everything we write. As I always say, me first, and then my guests. But read everything so you'll stay informed, along with the gibberish that we put out over here on a daily basis. I wrote about this, or actually I was asked about this in the mailbag. Would the Dolphins have been better off facing Flacco or Richardson? And that one's tough. And to me, I kind of am inclined to agree with you because Richardson, while he's going to make some plays where you're going to be like, holy smokes, he's also going to make some boneheaded decision, not quite on a Will Levis level, but close.
Yeah.
Whereas Flacco is very simple. If you get a pass rush on Flacco, you're good. He's not going to hurt you. If you don't, he can carve you up. And right now, I do have a concern with this Dolphin pass rush because they have 9 sacks on the season. They've gotten 0 sacks out of Chop Robinson. Jalen Phillips is on IR, and now Emmanuel Ogbah is dealing with a bicep injury. And yes, I promise I will get to the injury report as we keep talking. He's listed as questionable for the game on Sunday. So I don't know about the Dolphins' ability to generate a pass rush. Go ahead.
I will say trade deadlines are big coming up. There's going to be a few pass rushers out there for like a 5th round pick. As I'm looking and talking to people, and do the Dolphins jump on that? It'll be interesting to see because you talk about a position of need, and it's becoming that as the season moves on. Jalen Phillips, unfortunate injury now, Ogbah, and so what are they down to if Ogbah can't play? So it'll be interesting to see. That's something to watch coming up.
No, without question. And this is why I pushed back against the notion. We discussed this with your colleague Chris Perkins yesterday. NFL.com listed some veterans who could be on the move, who teams might want to trade, and they had the Dolphins with doing that with Emmanuel Ogbah. And I'm like, why would they do that? They need pass rushers. They're not in a position to give them away. Yeah. And this was under the guise of the Dolphins maybe doing a fire sale, looking to dump salaries if they lose the next couple of games before the November 5th trade deadline. I don't see that. Okay, let me get, without further delay, because there's been a lot of delay, the Dolphins injury report for this Indianapolis game, the final injury report. There could be the possibility of an update on Saturday. But for now, one player is listed as doubtful. That's safety Javon Holland, who's dealing with some broken bones in his finger, or a broken bone, in his hand. He was limited all week in practice. Now I got 3 guys who popped up on the injury report on Friday. Very interesting. Odell Beckham Jr., hamstring/personal, did not practice. He's questionable. Long snapper Blake Ferguson, personal, was limited, listed as questionable. Don't know any details about what exactly the personal situation was. Then tackle Austin Jackson, back injury, limited, listed as questionable. He wasn't on the injury report the first 2 days, which suggests the injury occurred during practice. Questionable if it was a really bad injury. They would already rule him out or list him as doubtful. The fact that he's questionable means that we know it's not something dramatically serious, but again, his status in jeopardy. If he doesn't play, I would expect Kendall Lamb to start at right tackle, not Patrick Paul. 4 more guys listed as questionable. Agba, we already discussed. Linebacker David Long Jr. with a knee injury, limited in practice all week. Cornerback Cam Smith, full participant in practice all week with a hamstring injury. And quarterback Skylar Thompson, rib injury, full participant all week. With Cam Smith, he's still on IR. This was his last week of practice. So before next Wednesday, which is the official end of the 3-week window, the Dolphins will have to have moved him to the 53-man roster, kept him on IR for the rest of the year, or waive him, which is clearly not happening. So it's one of the other two. And that move logically would come tomorrow, at which time the Dolphins would have to make a corresponding move to create room. McDaniel wasn't asked about Cam Smith today. I guess he's kind of low on the radar, and there were too many tour questions to ask. I don't know where that stands. And then guys who are off the injury report, pardon me, or did not get a game status designation, which means they are playing. Among them, running back Devontae Chan, who has cleared the concussion protocol, so he's good to go. Linebacker Mohamed Kamara with an ankle injury. This is a guy who's been inactive the entire season so far. Would be nice if he emerged. Not there yet. And safety Jordan Poyer will be back in the lineup with a shin, now that he's recovered from a shin injury. The Colts had 2 players ruled out, one of them running back Jonathan Taylor with the high ankle sprain, which makes a big difference for that Colts offense. So it's quite the list. And the Beckham, Ferguson, Jackson thing certainly came out of nowhere on this Friday. And as I said earlier, this looked like a really good week because everybody practiced Thursday, and then we had this going on. And I discussed, I know, go ahead, you were going to say something.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, not only for Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor out, but Michael Pittman is now questionable. He went from limited on Thursday to did not practice to Friday to officially questionable for the game. So, that's big considering the Dolphins gave up 7.9 yards a carry to New England. So you would think New England, with a pretty good offensive line, would think, well, we'd love to pound the ball, but do we have a running back? Now, I was out at practice today, and we were looking for Beckham Jr. They were running red zone, drill red zone plays, and Beckham Jr. wasn't there, and that's the first hint we had that he wasn't around, and saw Blake Ferguson roll a snap back, I believe on a field goal, same as the game the other day, but I didn't know that he was going to have issues too. So all this became a surprise after the McDaniel press conference, after the media's 15 minutes or so of watching limited practice. And it's kind of a weird end of the work week.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Colts and Michael Pittman. In fact, their top 3 wide receivers are questionable. That's Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, who's emerged as a really good player, and then Alec Pierce, who leads the NFL. He's got like 13 catches, but his average is 28.3, which is completely crazy. They're all questionable, and so is one of their starting tackles, Braden Smith, who has a knee injury and did not practice on Friday. So could be 2 teams who are missing some players. No, what I was going to ask you is your take on this, and I addressed this on the show yesterday. Is Javon Holland with the hand injury, playing with the contraption on his left hand, with the background of him being in a contract year, seeing what happened with Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt last year when the Dolphins did not extend those 2 original draft picks and let him leave via free agency. Also, Holland watching the Dolphins dole out big extensions to Tua, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill, and head coach Mike McDaniel, in Ramsey's case, with 2 years left on his contract. In Tyreek's case, with 2 years left on his contract, even though the money wasn't guaranteed anymore. Mike McDaniel's 2 years left on his contract, and Javon is probably going, hi, what about me? And then if you remember last year, there was the issue of Holland kind of sort of pulling himself out of the Buffalo game at the end of the year because he felt he couldn't perform to the level he wanted because of his knee issues. So what's your take on all of that, on how much the contract could be playing a factor in any of this?
Well, you can argue the contract. Well, let's start here with last year. the team cleared him to play. Remember, he had injuries to both knees.
Yep.
He said, "I'm not healthy." This is an uncomfortable no-fly zone, as I've said, for the media, in that we don't have all the pertinent information. We don't know. I generally side with the players. They know their bodies, and so, but there was some friction there inside the team over that one. The team did feel that, and this is a team that's gone out of its way to let players get extra, seemingly push it to make sure they get
Yep.
completely healthy before coming back. So, but again, this caused friction with the team is the only reason it became an issue. You move forward to this year, the contract. Now you can argue this both ways. You can argue that he's going to sit out because why get hurt going into a contract, or even play a little lesser than he could with a hand, and why put that on tape. But you can argue the other way. Here's a chance for him to show to play a little hurt and take one for the team. And so, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on what I would like to think if he's ready to go or he's capable, he'll be playing. The larger issue to me with the contract and situation in Javon Holland is safety a impact position where you want to put a lot of money? And B, is how good is Javon Holland? Those are the two issues to me. At his best, he's very good. You saw the opener against Jacksonville where he makes the game-winning play. Okay, but I will say there's not a lot of, and not plays like that, but just impactful plays in a game that I see him making are enough, or is unsteady, maybe inconsistent. I thought at the end of his rookie year he was going to be great, and then you didn't see it enough. And so you couple that with, is safety a position of impact in today's NFL? It's sort of a hybrid cornerback safety position anymore when you can't have the highlight hits, for lack of a better word, that you could in another era. So, I'm sure they see. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. My bad. Bad Alan. Bad Alan.
No. Go ahead.
To me, I would say no, it's not, except if you have a special one. And I would give you three guys who, like, as you were talking, popped into my head. Kyle Hamilton from Baltimore, Brian Branch from Detroit. That dude is a baller. I mean, he makes plays all over the place. And then Antoine Winfield Jr. from Tampa Bay. You get that kind of guy, he can make an impact as much as a cornerback. But again, is Javon Holland that player? I know Pro Football Focus absolutely. And for those listening on the podcast, on the audio version, I'm doing the hearts emoji here because they love. You got to do a perfect heart.
I can't do it.
There we go.
I can't get it.
I gotta give lessons on this and charge people how to do it. Okay. And they've had him last year. I think as the number 2 safety in the NFL. And to me, I'm like, what am I missing? Because I'm not seeing he's good.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's special. And this is the same thing with guard last year with Robert Hunt. Unless you're Quentin Nelson or Zach Martin in his prime, guard is not necessarily a position where you're going to make that much of an impact. You can't because of the nature of the position. Robert Hunt was really good. Defensive tackle, again, if you happen to be Chris Jones, absolutely. Or even Madubuike last year with the Ravens. Was Christian Wilkins $28 million good? I don't know.
How about 20 million that they could have signed for the year before? Is he that?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And poor Christian, of course, now is on injured reserve and stands a pretty good chance based on the general timeline of Jones' fracture injuries of missing his homecoming at Hard Rock Stadium on November 17th, I want to say it is. So, any final thoughts here? You already put down your prediction. Mine will be out.
I'm curious to see this game, how this plays out, because you would think this would be a extension of the last drive for the Dolphins, where they try ball control and try to time a possession, get the 4 or 5 yards a carry, going for the late second half, maybe tire out a Colts defense that has been vulnerable to the run. Just as the Dolphins, the game plan to me is similar. You have mobile quarterbacks in both cases, so that adds an element to it. And so I'm curious to see, can the Dolphins stick with the run? Can Mike McDaniel stick with the run like he did? And I think he can, because he was talking about today, however he was talking in ways that I really hadn't heard, and that the offense has to be able basically to bend to whatever the defense is giving them. And we haven't seen a lot on that quick strike when two is out. But so I'm curious to see how this strategically plays out.
Yeah, you would think, again, they rushed for 193 yards against the Patriots. They're facing a Colts team that's 31st in the NFL in run defense. I think it screams the Dolphins have to try to establish the run and stick with the run. However, needs to be said always. It's always great to go into a game with that game plan, but game circumstances can dictate a switch, because if you fall behind by 10 or 14 points quickly, then you necessarily have the luxury of doing that. So
yeah. And Indianapolis might say, okay, we're going to dare Huntley to beat us, and maybe that's, they know they're 31st in rushing defense too. And so, like I said, strategically, this will be an interesting game to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those the Dolphins absolutely can win. I don't want to say should win, but they can win even if they have Tyler Huntley as their quarterback. And
absolutely. So, absolutely.
We shall see. As I said, my prediction will become official tomorrow on Miami Dolphins on SI.com, where I'll do my complete game preview, along with 4 other stories that I have planned, or 5 other stories that will be on the site. Please check it out. Miami Dolphins on SI.com.
You are prolific. You are prolific. A prolific writer. I
just write a lot. I just write a lot. None of it's good, but I just write. I'm kidding. Check it out. That was a joke. Check it out. It's good stuff. And check out this gentleman's fine work at sunsentinel.com. Dave Hyde, as always, a pleasure. And guys, everyone, thanks for watching. We will be back tomorrow around 4-ish when we will break down the news of the day. I suspect there could be some important news related to the game against the Colts on Sunday. So be there for that. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, subscribe, download all that good stuff. And then we will catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.